Hey, this is Man-Made Mead. Today I'm reviewing a very cool product that I'm quite excited about. I've never used a conical fermenter before. However, that's what I'm reviewing today. This is, right here behind me, the Catalyst Fermentation System from Craft A Brew. Now, Craft A Brew is a company that has created brewing supplies and equipment, and this is one of their products, like I said, the Catalyst Fermentation System. It is a conical fermenter, meaning that, as you can see here, one, it's on a nice stand, I should say for one, but two, it has a shaping cone at the bottom that allows for anything like your sediment, your trub, if you're making beer, just stuff to settle at the bottom, and you can actually rack that off without having to move everything out to a different container. So over time, everything will settle into the bottom of this, and then it has a butterfly valve. This butterfly valve, ooh, as I lose everything, I'll show you. The butterfly valve goes straight down, which then allows for you to take the container off and then put it back on. Now, I'll talk about this more, but what I'm doing today is I'm testing it with a mead, and this channel is Man-Made Mead. Of course, I make beers and wines, but I really wanted to try this with a mead. And what I'm going to be doing is using my last of my avocado blossom honey from Dutch Gold, as well as, in the future, mango flavoring from Aerating. It is, I've used the watermelon flavoring before. It's the same thing. It's like a natural extract. Kind of like a natural flavoring, but more actually has sugar involved in it, so it creates some new variables. But the big test today is to try this. So I really want to put this through the test. So let me first talk about everything that's featured here. With this this Catalyst Fermentation System, you get a really nice fermenter, for one. At the top of this, I'll kind of disassemble it a little bit. This is a really great lid. This lid has these nice connectors on the side that are very well built. They're obviously meant for lots of use, and they snap right onto the top. It's got a great seal, and we're going to put that to the test as well to see how well it seals over time. It comes with its own bunge or bung, however you say it. And then, of course, I say its own because Craft A Brew has their own name on it. It's not just a generic one, which is very, very good on Craft A Brew, I must say, for them to have their own stuff. It's very authentic. Next, breaking it down even further, you have the actual fermenter itself. So I can disconnect this bottom part, and I would, but I'm not going to right now. This fermenter is a 6.5 gallon fermenter, conical, of course, as you can see. On the bottom of it, this is the real fun part for me. You have a mason jar, and you can kind of see, maybe if it'll focus, there's a Craft A Brew logo even on that. They have their own mason jar. Again, very professional. This is a butterfly valved conical fermenter, so let's see if you can see down in there. Right now the valve is closed. If I turn this, it opens the valve, which would allow for things to fall down into, all your sediment and everything to fall down into the container. And of course you can close it. So what you would do is, as this is setting over time, open this, leave it open, everything settles. Let's say that you had a lot of dead yeast in there, or maybe you put your pineapples or fruit or apple, whatever. A lot of it gets stuck at the bottom there. Close it off, and then you would unscrew this, and as you unscrew it, hopefully you don't get a lot of stuff flying out. Dump this out, sanitize, put it back in, and next thing you know, it is ready to be opened again and possibly get rid of any other sediment. So there is that. I'll set this down for now. This is one of the coolest parts for me, in my opinion. And it has a very nice stand. Very nice stand. Craft A Brew on the front. This thing right here is very sturdy. I mean, it can definitely hold up, take a beating, I'm sure. And the whole system itself is, I would say, very, very sturdy inside of here. Of course, you can jostle it around enough for it to go crazy, but even the lightest little shaking, not that you're going to be doing this all the time, but that proves that it's a sturdy stand. So, and the very last things included with this, which is pretty cool, this is a bottling or racking connection. So this has a little tube connection for a tube on the end, which you could use to bottle. You could use to do whatever, move to another container. You just replace the spot where the mason jar is. it also comes with its own tube. So you pretty much have everything you need to start brewing, and I'm gonna go ahead and test that today. And I'm really excited to try it to see what's gonna happen. I have not sanitized it. So what I'm gonna do real fast is use some Star San. I have some Star San solution in this bucket right here. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse this out real fast, get everything sanitized, and then we will start to make the mead. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. So let me go ahead and sanitize. Okay, so we've sanitized everything, ready to go. This fermenter is ready to have stuff put in it. Star San solution and water, basically. Distilled water is the best to use. And you can put distilled water in a spray bottle, and that frankly does an even better job because it stays over time. You just spray what you need. You don't always have to have a bucket like I have right now. I have in this bucket right here, this was once 60 pounds of avocado blossom honey from Dutch Gold honey. It is now about 8.3 pounds because this bucket itself weighs 3 pounds. There's 11.3 total weight. So we have about 8 pounds of honey to work with. My recipe for this mead is gonna be right here. And that is, I'm gonna use about 4 gallons of water, about 8 pounds of honey, so 2 pounds per gallon of water. It's a little lighter than what I'm normally doing. However, I do think it'll be kind of refreshing. We're still gonna hit about an 8%, I would say, 9% ABV mead, which I think is pretty good. And then we eventually, in the secondary, probably after I stabilize, because I don't want the sugars to be fermented on, we'll use that mango Aerating artificial flavoring or natural flavoring. And I'll have that. I don't have it right now. I just ordered it actually from Aerating. You can check at their link below to find all their flavors. They've got tons of them. Stuff that you wouldn't even think about. Cookies and cream. I saw a fudge brownie. I saw, of course, what was it? White peach. I think it was white peach. Stuff that's just kind of wild off the fence, off the wall. Pretty cool stuff. Check that out. Also, of course, as I'm talking about this, check out the Catalyst Fermenter from Craft A Brew. That's down here below. But let's go ahead and start putting this through the test. I won't be mixing everything in here. I'm going to be basically mixing everything in this container right here. So I'm going to pour all my water into our 5-gallon bucket that has the honey in it currently. This honey is also, I will add, really interesting because I just bought some more honey from them recently, and you can definitely tell the varietals of honey I mean, by the smell alone, of course the taste, but I cannot recommend Dutch Gold enough. Every single time I've received a shipment or anything from them, it's always been just high quality honey, and it's been a really good price as well. So I'm a big fan of Dutch Gold. In this bucket, there we go. They seal them very well, which is good because when you're dealing with you know, ants or anything like that, you want a good seal. So in this right here, you see we have all of this honey. It's really, really dark honey. Smells amazing though. You definitely get a very floral vibe to it. And I think it'll be great for what I'm doing. Between this floral and the mango, well, I think I'll have a great mead. So about 4 gallons of mead, a little more because 8 pounds of honey is about 2/3 of a gallon. So we're looking at like probably 4.5 gallons after sediment, of course. So pouring in our water, and then we will need to stir. I use a aerating or degassing one, excuse me, for all of my stirring. I'm using purified water right here. So we're just gonna pour this in. I'll get a little closer shot for you guys. Okay, we're gonna pour our water in. There's a lot of honey down there. Okay, and from a previous honey bucket I have a bucket that has a hole drilled into it so I can seal this around my buckets and basically use it as a shield as I stir, because I'm gonna stir really vigorously to incorporate air but also to mix up all the honey. We're talking about room temp honey. Not that that affects the ultimate mixture of everything. It still mixes in well, but we do want it to be done thoroughly. So we will go ahead and use our drill and our degassing wand here, and I'm just gonna stir like crazy, going one way and then the other, And this will make, hopefully, it'll mix all of our honey and water well together. Okay, so after finishing about 5 minutes of stirring, we have a pretty well mixed. I would lift it up and show you, but it's pretty heavy. If there's any honey left at the bottom, we will add the last of our water in and mix that in, but I'm pretty sure I got all of the honey. So now the next step, and I wish I was, you know, the Hulk, but I'm not necessarily strong enough to do this. This has been sanitized and we're ready to go ahead and add it into our main fermenter. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. Now down here, like I said, I'm lowering it because it's pretty heavy and I don't really want to make a big mess. So we're gonna pour this in. This is our must. And we got a really dark looking must because of that avocado honey. Avocado Blossom is a very dark honey, but it, in my experience, has made some very great meads. So I'm quite excited about that. We still have a little bit left to add. And I'll go ahead and raise this back up. Okay, one thing I also want to do, just to make sure I don't have any issues, is tighten that, mason jar at the bottom, just so there's no leaking. All right, you can see in here, don't really have any honey left. We're pretty solid on the mixture. And you know, there could still be some floating around in here, and we'll talk about the next kind of protocol. But I'm gonna add my last little bit of water. This was 4 gallons of water. I get mine at Sam's because Sam's does a great job. And we now have 4 gallons of water and about 8 pounds of honey. And I would turn this a little bit, see if I can maybe. Actually, I'll just leave it like that. So you can see on the side, maybe you can see on the side here, there are, if we can get it to focus, you might not be able to see, it's pretty dark. There are some lines here saying the gallon markers. This is 6 gallons, you know, 5 gallons. We're about where I said, about 4 and 2/3. That's about it right there, 4 and 2/3 gallons in total. So it is, it's very nice to have that gauge to be able to just kind of look at it and go, hey, this is how much I have left. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to put any more water in. I think we're going to take a gravity reading real quick, but it's not going to be completely accurate. And here's why. Whenever you add your honey and your water in, initially you think, oh, it's all mixed in, great. Truth is, I could have poured that thing in there, and there could be some globs of honey that are still there, that are still full, and they haven't dissolved yet into the mead. So I want to wait probably about 24 hours. Hopefully by that time, the water and honey have fully conglomerated, become their mixture of must, and then at that point, we will go ahead and start adding in, or doing our gravity reading, because that will be the most accurate gravity reading we can get. So I'm going to take one for now though, just, you know, for posterity's sake, just to have an idea and see if it changes about 24 hours from now. We will also need to take care of our yeast. Now, I haven't started my yeast yet, but I will here, I'll probably actually do that first before the gravity reading. You want to normally rehydrate your yeast, and the way you do that is simply by adding water. And I used to go for Protect Evolution, and I forgot to buy more. So instead I'll be using regular yeast nutrient and yeast energizer in the future. We'll talk about that stuff as well. So I'm basically just going to take my yeast and pitch it into some water real fast and let them get rehydrated that way. It'll be room temp water. However, it'll still be something to get them going initially. Okay, so I have my yeast. I'm using the Lalvin K1 V1116, one that I really like using, especially for tropical flavors, tropical fruits. I think it's been really successful for me. So I'm going to use 2 packets, which is 10 grams in total. The more yeast you use, the quicker the fermentation will start, just because the yeast have more ammunition. They have more army to begin with. And so if you are trying to simply start your fermentation with a small amount of yeast, they're having to really build up and work hard, and you don't want to stress them out. If you stress out yeast, you start to get fusels. Fusels are off flavors, off smells you get from weird alcohols, and there's a whole list of them, and there's probably, I think, 23 or something like that. Anyways, all these fusels are just bad news. You don't want that. So do what you can, especially to help your yeast thrive. Those things, the things that will help it thrive, excuse me, are yeast nutrient, yeast energizer, oxygen, and of course rehydrating does help. It's not essential, you can do it without rehydrating, but it does give them a little more progress. I'm going to open these up, 10 grams. This is room temp water, spring water. I'm just going to put them in here and we're going to let them go for just a few minutes while we finish our little process. So K1V1 116, lots of ones there. Let's go ahead and take our gravity reading and see kind of where our gravity is setting right now. All right, our gravity, after a quick check, this is a rough estimate, I remind you. This is not, I would not say the final one just because of how this works, is 1.0, let's see, 1.070. Now that means that we're probably setting at roughly if it completely ferments out, a 9% mead. That's pretty good to me. I would say that's a pretty solid mead in itself. So we will leave it at that. This is, again, only 8 pounds of honey, not a ton. It'll be a great mead regardless. So let's talk about the next step, which is aerating, getting oxygen into your must. Okay, so my next step is aerating, like I said, and I have sanitized this. This is basically just here, I'll unplug it. There is not a fish pump, but it's a pump, air pump that goes to a air filter, as you can see here, and that air filter goes to an oxygen stone, and the oxygen stone is what pumps all of your oxygen into the mead. Now the filter helps keep bad things out. We're going to set this just straight into here, and it doesn't pump in oxygen rapidly, too quickly. In fact, I'm trying to get to where you can see, I don't know if you can see on the front of there, but it's pumping in our oxygen kind of slowly. It'll probably take roughly 30 minutes or more, 30 to 45 minutes for us to get all of our oxygen in to that mead. Now, in that meantime, I will probably go ahead and lightly put the lid on just so nothing falls in the top of that. But let me give a couple remarks about this thing. One, I'm already impressed by the design of it, and it's very portable. It's also very durable. Like this stand right here is clearly meant to take a beating, to be picked up, put down, and to do whatever you need. Same thing with this. This is a really nice plastic, and that sounds silly, but when you think about our plastic white tubs that we use all the time, sometimes you could get a flimsy one. So another test that I'm really curious about is the seal on the lid. This is a huge thing. If you don't have a great seal on your lid, you will run into issues where you don't see fermentation as accurately, as actively as you want. A big factor to seeing how your mead or wine or beer is fermenting is how active is your airlock. And if you don't have a great seal, then you have air and CO2 leaving out places you don't know. Airlock isn't doing anything. Really have to watch out for that. So I'm curious to see how that seal works. But my initial reactions, I'm super impressed by this thing. I think it's going to be a solid fermenter, a solid way to not have to rack as much, especially if you're using a lot of yeast like I'm about to use, or if you're using fruit in the primary, anything like that that could be hazardous. Now, there is one main concern, and I've seen it in other people's review. I've also had people mention it to me in the same light, is when you open this thing up, and I've kind of purposely waited to do this because I figured that people would have the same reaction and question. When you open up the butterfly valve, which is this little flap that does this, opens everything up, and you can close it like that. When you open that up, you're allowing all of this oxygen that's in this mason jar to basically go straight up through the mead, or the beer, or the wine. In the case of a primary fermentation, doesn't matter. Your yeast need air. In the case of aging, long term, let's say that you want to just sit this thing and let it be there for 2 months. Well, if you're constantly opening and re-racking and stuff like that, you're gonna add oxygen into your alcohol, And alcohol and oxygen obviously don't go together. We know that by now. So I'm not too worried about it. Frankly, I see it as that oxygen, yes, can oxygenate the alcohol, but it can also help to degas a little bit. There's got to be a little degassing that occurs when you do this. Now, obviously, if you're doing it all the time, yeah. My plan is not to use this as a long-term aging. It's really just a primary fermentation vessel, and then I would move it to a bucket where it's obviously not going to be a fermentation vessel by that point. Generally, it's going to be just a way to sit for a little while. Or I would move it to a glass carboy, which is great for aging long-term. But that's the big concern about this butterfly valve. I've seen it with a lot of people. In fact, I'll show you real fast kind of what I mean. I'm going to open up this valve, let it rush in, and you'll see a bunch of bubbles pop up. Okay, so here's what I mean. I'm going to put the lid on just so there's no splashing, crazy splashing going on. Just kind of set it on top of there. Watch this. So we're going to open up this butterfly valve, and it rushes in. You see up there was a lot of oxygen that went into the vessel itself. Obviously that creates an issue. I've also got a little bit of a leak here. I didn't get a great enough tightening on here. That's going to be a problem. So let me fix that real fast. Okay, so one small critique, and this is kind of my own fault, but I just want to, for anyone that would buy this thing, be careful when you put this jar on that you get it real tight, because otherwise there could be a chance of some whatever leaking out. And you don't want to deal with that. That's just kind of extra annoying. But you see the primary purpose of this is to drop everything down to the bottom. I've left the butterfly valve down because then it lets things fall down as they need, or let's say that stuff needs to settle in different ways. So I've left that like that, but you see how the air rushed up? That's the big issue. I don't think it's going to be as huge of an issue as some people, because I use it for primary fermentation. Secondary fermentation, yeah, that might be an issue. Anytime there's true alcohol present, could be a real issue. But primary fermentation, it would not. All right, so it's been about 25 minutes or so. Our yeast have just been sitting, rehydrating, and we're going to go ahead and add them. Now, this is a really easy process, and I need a sanitized spoon of something to help scrape any yeast out. Take my spoon, as I have it, dump it in my sanitizing water, and we're clean. Okay, so I'm going to dump my yeast in, 2 packets, 10 grams of Lalvin K1 V116. And this helps get all of it out. You can dump it straight in. I think the yeast will have a greater chance of surviving now. I'll leave the oxygen stone in because that will help, of course, oxygenate the mead and get that going and help the yeast really reproduce as they need to. Let's talk about the last step of this, which is your yeast nutrient, the help that propels the yeast. All right, the last step before you really start your fermentation is using, and this is not necessary, but it does help the yeast quite a bit. That is using yeast nutrient. Now this is stuff I bought from my local brew shop. It's just yeast nutrient, food grade diammonium phosphate, and you use 1 teaspoon per gallon. So in this case, I would use 4 teaspoons because I have about 4 gallons of mead. And then I also use Fermax, which is a yeast energizer, and they kind of switch names and go back and forth, but the Fermax is the one I've been using. And this contains diammonium phosphate, dipotassium phosphate, magnesium, a bunch of stuff. 1 to 1.5 teaspoons per gallon. So we're going to use, I'm going to go on the higher side of this. I'm going to use 6 teaspoons of yeast energizer just to ensure that there is plenty of yeast energizer in there. And what I do is I use a stagger nutrient system. If you've never heard of this, you take all of your combined yeast nutrient and energizer, you put it into a container, let's say this for example, and over the course of about 4 sessions, 4 times, you will add it in. So you'll add a quarter in. I'll add a quarter in today, day 0 as we call it. And then about 48 hours from now, 2 days from now, I'll add another quarter in. At about 4 days from now, I will add another quarter in. 6 days, another quarter. You can do that, and that will help the yeast be supplied nutrients over time. There's also the method of just throwing it in all at once. I would like to do a test one day to see which is more effective. I don't know. I don't have a lot of scientific data, but I do know that over time, feeding yeast over time doesn't necessarily affect them as much. It does affect them more. Whereas if you feed them all at once, they could kind of gorge themselves and die out quickly. Now, is this totally true? I think it's true. I'm sure there's people that don't agree. Some people say you don't need yeast nutrient, any of that stuff. However, I think you do. So what I'll do is, I won't do it on here because it's kind of boring. I'll put my 4 tablespoons and my 6 teaspoons into here, shake it up, add a quarter of it. So basically I'll take my math, do some math, put it in there, not a big deal. Anyways, this fermenter is super, super exciting. I think it's gonna be a blast to use because it seems really versatile. Now, I will continue to give updates over time, but because this video is already so long, I want to go ahead into here. There'll be another part 2 to see how this is going. In part 2, we'll probably see the end of the fermentation, and we'll also see the adding of the mango flavoring. At the end of this, I'll put it right here. I want to give the gravity update, what the true gravity is of this thing before we go too crazy. And the next video will show the process of, oh, how is it fermenting? Give some extra updates, but this is a long video. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in this Catalyst fermentation system, I cannot recommend it enough already. I'm already a big fan. Of course, I think everything can have issues. We'll find out if this has issues or not, but so far this has been blowing me away. Check out the link down below to get one yourself, and then let me know if you have one or if you are interested, what you think. Everyone, I think it's true, everything can have problems, and I don't want to be too positive and say that this is the best thing ever, because it could fail in some way, but right now it's definitely impressing me. So if you want to also support me, support them of course, but if you want to support me, go check out those links down below. I got a Facebook page where you can be part of our a brew crew, or people who make mead. It's a pretty cool little place for people to talk. There is also a Patreon where you can get exclusive content. You can get access to live streams. I live streamed the unboxing of this thing on that area. You can also be on the Wall of Fame. There's a lot of cool stuff. There's a Society 6, which is a merchandise store. I have a P.O. box where you can send me things if you would like to. Honey, water, yeast, letters, I don't care. Send it to me. I would love to read and get your mail. Just fun to get to talk to you guys. And then, what was my last thing? Oh, I know what it is. Generally, best thing you can do. Of course, those links are great. Like and subscribe, and just let me know what you think. I appreciate you guys' comments and sharing. If you'll share this video with somebody, hopefully they might be inspired to make mead, or you can go out and inspire them. Everyone here has the power to inspire someone else to make mead, which we should, because it's a great drink, and it needs to be brought out there. So I appreciate you guys watching. Check this out, Catalyst Fermentation System from Craft A Brew, great company, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I'll be back soon with an update about how this is going. So see you then, and cheers.